Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And we are so excited again to be joined by Kat Schwarz. She's a holistic healer and CEO and founder of her own company, Compassionate Healing Services. Kat Schwarz, welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Jill? Thanks for having
I'm doing well. Your website, chsyoga.com. There's plenty that you offer. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners?
Yes. Hi. Yeah. In my first career, I was a physical therapist. I worked as a physical therapist in traditional healthcare settings for almost 20 years. I have since given up my license, but that background is still obviously a foundation for me. Now, I primarily offer services in the Reiki energy sphere. Through that, I do mediumship as well. I offer very unique services, all in the realm of holistic healing, but I use that when I say holistic, I mean with the W. I'm certainly not throwing out the gifts of Western medicine and science and what we have, what we have learned in more recent decades, but I also incorporate indigenous wisdom, wisdom that has been lost and I think can really be integrated into one much more effective treatment plan when it comes to mental health. So that is my focus now, is holistic mental health treatment and really suicide prevention.
Thank you for being here. We're going to definitely dive into this Reiki energy healing, all the different ways that you can help people with energy healing. But first, I think it's important to get to know you. I know you're in Medford, New Jersey, so you're close to us in New York. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and what brought you here today to this platform, and how did you get involved with this type of energy healing?
Sure. Well, I actually am from New York myself. I am originally from Long Island, New York, Hempstead.
Oh, cool. I'm from Farmingdale, so you're Nassau of Suffolk, but yep, okay.
Absolutely. I came to New Jersey oh my gosh, 1997 when I graduated high school. I went to Stockton. It was then called the Richard Stockton College of New Jersey. It's now called Stockton University. They had an excellent physical therapy program. I got my master's in 2002, and I started a very traditional career in physical therapy. And I also got married at that time. And, because of my career in physical therapy and the fact that I was living such a quote unquote normal life, I really had always viewed myself as very mentally healthy. Like I would never have put myself on any other spectrum but mentally healthy. And that delusion came crashing down when I became a mom. So many of the experiences that so many first time moms have, and not being able to breastfeed, and things that just were really, really discouraging at the time. And I fell into what they were calling a postpartum depression, but it really didn't lift, even with the talk therapy that I started at the time. And then in 2000, my first baby was born in 2010, and then in 2013 I had another child, another boy, and his birth was traumatic. So again, something that a lot of women have experienced is birth trauma. But for me, it really was the, if you will, the straw that broke the camel's back, as far as me being able to really know or believe that I was okay, because my mental health just simply deteriorated to the point where I really couldn't function, and anxiety became a real significant problem in my life. And more and more so, my mental health started to deteriorate over the next several years, to the point where I was being told that I was bipolar. And I had to be on mood stabilizers. I had gone through a bunch of different pharmaceutical treatments, and at that point was being told that I needed to take mood stabilizers. And that was, a real turning point, because those medications specifically, for me at least, the treatment was worse than the disease, and the side effects that I was having from these really strong pharmaceuticals were just worse than the symptoms they were supposedly treating. And then I was going through very traditional and even out of the box treatments, talk therapy, EMDR treatments. I went through a 14-month DBT skills training, which was very, very beneficial and effective. But I still found myself so deeply depressed at that time that I really, I was suicidal. I never actively attempted suicide, but the thoughts were very, very loud, and they were very, very persistent. And at that time, I went so far as to go to a partial hospitalization program. And I found myself in this partial hospitalization program with people who frankly had, some of them, it was their 8th time there. And I was just feeling really hopeless. This was the only options available to me at that time, or when I had insurance. I was lucky enough to have health insurance, but the options that I was being presented just weren't making me feel better. And I found a psychiatrist at that time who validated my use of cannabis at that time quite secretly as medicine.
Yep.
And in New Jersey, I was lucky that at that time, and now it's recreationally legal, but at that time it was medically legal for trauma. And she was the first person to really put a label on what I had been through as trauma. And she even used the word complex trauma. She told me that I had something called complex PTSD. And it really opened my eyes to what I had experienced when I was younger. And the name of my book is called It Could Have Been Worse, because so much of what I experienced when I was younger, I wouldn't have called overtly abusive. And yet there was trauma. There was a lot of trauma happening on, as in the form of a lot of family loss. I had, my father passed away when I was just 21, but he was one of many, many, many family members prior to him who I had lost, including friends my age from tragic accidents and things like that. So just in that way, I had experienced a lot of trauma, but I unfortunately had a very antagonistic relationship with my only sibling. He was a big bully to me. My mother had a lot of mental health issues that were untreated and undiagnosed, and that had a huge impact on me. So, so when I came to this crisis point in my mid-30s of, I really never would have called myself anything but mentally healthy. It really opened my eyes to that we need to broaden the definition of trauma. And just because something could have been worse doesn't mean that it wasn't impactful, and doesn't mean that it didn't leave scars. So it really was in taking on the label of complex trauma and frankly getting the medicine I needed in the form of medical cannabis and really destigmatizing that for myself, because I had grown up in a society that really demonizes that plant.
Yeah.
And yet glorifies things like alcohol, which I used for 20 years, but to no benefit, in fact, to quite a lot of detriment to myself. So it really took allowing myself to do things differently that started to turn the ship in the right direction.
Wow. And here you are now helping so many people. And there's so much potential in healing with Reiki. For those new listeners too, Reiki and energy healing, could you talk about what it is? Let's go through that. And then we'll go through some of the breath work and plant medicines and all that you believe in as well. So to begin with, what is Reiki and how can that help people?
Reiki is the Japanese term for universal life force energy. It's all around us and within us. I want to first start by validating the skeptics, because I myself was an atheist for over 18 years. I was a very proud atheist at that time. I had grown up with a Catholic background in which things like Reiki aren't, part of it, but I had very traditional religious views until about the age of 21 when my father passed away and my faith died with him. And for about 18 years, I really lived in a space of complete skepticism about anything energy or spiritual or any of that. So it really took me, words don't teach, experiences teach. So it really took me, starting with cannabis and, changing or opening my mind to what else might be possible, and really thinking, well, what if there's something to this Reiki, for me to experience the benefits of it myself. But there was a time in my life where, some of my nurse friends, for instance, were attuned to Reiki, and I thought it was ridiculous. But, but then I started thinking, once I did open my eye to it, like, just because I can't see the Wi-Fi that's powering my phone or
Sure.
computer, but it's there, just
Yeah.
not, you can't see everything that's there,
My
right?
5-year-old just asked me yesterday, Mom, where's the Wi-Fi? And I'm like, it's technically all around us. So we started running around the kitchen and he's like, I'm in the Wi-Fi. I'm in the Wi-Fi. I said, good question, but good. You're right. We don't see it, but yeah.
It's so cute that I use that example and
Yeah, it just resonated. Really.
exactly. Yeah. So it did take a large degree of dismantling my own skepticism around it and opening my mind. But once I did, so it became something that I started off believing and eventually came to know. So the trajectory really was through because of my own mental health struggles and all that I was pursuing. I decided to pursue a yoga teacher certification, which gave me really, at that time, I just wanted to know why breathing was making me feel better than Xanax, for instance,
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
alcohol, right? And so I really started doing yoga for the very first time, just for inner peace, not for weight loss, and started feeling so much better just from an hour spent breathing and stretching, even gently. And so, started just, in energetic terms, raising my vibration slowly. So through yoga, I was raising my vibration. And then I had a very sudden and rapid spiritual awakening. This was in 2018. I decided to attend a mediumship workshop, honestly, to expose that medium as a fraud, because I didn't think such things existed. And that experience that day was so intense with what I
Hmm.
feel energetically, the healing, the specific details that were coming from this medium that he could never have known. It really just kind of blew the lid off of my beliefs at that time. And and he's the one who told me that Reiki was part of my path and that I had the gifts that he had. And at that time, I really pursued that wholeheartedly because I had the financial privilege to do so. And slowly but surely became Reiki 1 attuned. I got an accessible yoga teacher certification. I got Thai massage certified. I got my Reiki 2 and Reiki master attunement back to back right before COVID hit. So I opened my private practice in January. I got Reiki 2, 2020. I got Reiki 2 and master attuned
Wow.
in February of 2020, and then we all know what happened in March of 2020.
I know.
And then at that time, though, in my personal life, that was when my ex-husband and I decided that we no longer wanted to try to make it work. And I met my current fiance, Alexandra, and again, just raising my vibration, which is a fancy way of saying feeling better.
Yeah. And attracting
Right.
other positive energy like yourself that's on the same level, right? Hmm.
Exactly. So I started to raise my vibration. I started to feel generally better. And now all of a sudden, this Reiki that at that time I really was only offering to my Thai massage clients or my physical therapy clients as kind of an add-on, or I would make sure that a Reiki session included a neck massage because I didn't necessarily even believe in the power of it myself. It felt like something that in and of itself wasn't enough. But I became so aligned with my energy through a lot of shadow work, a lot of different therapies, a lot of letting go of situations, people, places, and things that were no longer serving me. And through that alignment, the energy started moving me. So it went from me placing my hands on someone and believing that something was happening to the energy undeniably moving my hands. And that's really when things got very interesting for me.
Wow. Wow, this is amazing. And by the way, this energy healing work you're speaking of can be done anywhere around the world. It's just like you mentioned the Wi-Fi, which is amazing. Now you're based out of Medford, New Jersey, but you're working with clients all over the world via Zoom like this, or even phone
Absolutely.
calls, or is it mostly you prefer
Absolutely.
Zoom to
Yeah.
see the
So
person?
once you're Reiki 2 attuned, you can send Reiki from a distance. Yes, I'm a Reiki master teacher, so I can
Right.
attune currently attune up to level 2, and I'm working on a Reiki towards my Reiki master of masters. But so I can offer services from all over the world. When I say it got interesting, besides the fact that the energy itself started moving my body, what I then started realizing, and honestly, what just happened here with me using that specific example of the Wi-Fi and your son, and let's just say it, all kids are channels. All kids are pure channels of spirit. Our kids are often signs, sources of miracles for me now that I'm in tune with that. And so when you're in alignment, right? And I can't channel for my Reiki clients unless I am, the things that occur to me to say aren't just my personal thoughts, they're channeled guidance. And that really started becoming obvious when I would go through a Reiki session. I would feel compelled to say certain things, and then we'd go out and choose cards, or they had chosen cards before, and exactly what had channeled through was on those cards. That guidance was very, very solid. So I really started to open up to an understanding that I was channeling, and I could call myself a medium of spirit. um and so through my Reiki sessions, and I do have an offering that's going to be going on my website. I promise it will be here next time we meet. But so I can offer very unique services to my clients, and one of those services that I'm actually going to be launching is as a private investigator, if you will, for the spirit world.
Wonderful. Congratulations. And by the way, if you're just tuning in, let's remind everybody of the website. It's CHS,
Yes,
right? Yoga.com.
that stands for Compassionate Healing Services.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I know there's still so much to talk about. I mean, there's so much in your notes. You want to talk a little bit about the definition of trauma that really needs to be broadened, the health harming effects of BMI, intentional weight loss. I mean, there's so much. So I'll ask you, where, we only have 10 minutes left. What would you like to share?
Well, I think I already touched on about broadening the definition
Yeah,
of
for
trauma. So
sure.
I can talk a little bit more on where that came from. So I was very, very humbled to be chosen in 2018 for a New Jersey State Task Force on ACEs, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And that is a task force that was put together
Oh,
because of a study in 1995, or around that time. In a study came out called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. It's a very well-known and validated study that showed that the majority of adults have experienced at least one adverse childhood event that is causing some effect, or likely to cause some effect in physical and mental health. And what's really stunning, I mean, honestly, the research, when it first came out, the research didn't believe their own results. That's how significant they were.
wow.
It took them validating the study again and again and again and across different populations for them really to trust the results. And because it was quite stunning to show that there's a dose, but also quite logical, that there's a dose response relationship to trauma. The more trauma one is experienced, the more likely they are going to be affected by it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And certainly one traumatic event is going to be, though certainly could be very impactful, is going to be less impactful than, let's say, an entire lifetime of traumatic events that all compiled on one another. That's really the difference between PTSD and complex PTSD, right?
Yep.
PTSD is a terrible event, complex PTSD is a terrible life, or certainly a, a, a complexity to the levels of trauma. So but it was showing such stunning results, such as people with 4 or more ACEs. And when I take the ACE study, I would give myself a score of 4. People with 4 or more ACEs are up to 12 times more likely to commit suicide. People with 6 or more ACEs live up to 20 years fewer than their untraumatized counterparts. So these are not
Oh.
benign. These are not benign events. These are not benign results. And so, and through my work on that task force, I believe it was 2020, I was trained as official. I became certified as a presenter of the ACEs curriculum. So that's the foundational, that's the, I guess, the professional foundation of the work I do around trauma, although so much of what I know about trauma is from personal experience.
Oh. And we've all, I think, had some form of trauma, childhood trauma, and it holds us back, right? It gives us these limiting beliefs, and you don't even realize it, though. I'm sure a lot of your clients that you work with probably don't even realize this, and you're able to kind of bring that out of them in a sense and cleanse them from it. Can I say it that way?
Absolutely.
Heal them? Yeah.
I mean, I will say I get feedback not uncommon that people feel like they've gotten more out of a few sessions with me than 20 years of therapy, because
Hmm.
I'm really viewing it from a higher lens. And that isn't to say, and I definitely don't want to perpetuate the idea in this society as it stands, that everyone can self-heal, because healing is a privilege. And a part of what I want to change here on this planet is the accessibility to these very powerful underutilized medicines such as breath work, right? Such as Reiki, which is really when you go down a 5 minute attunement. I mean, we're not talking about things that take a tremendous amount of time. They take honestly a belief and a commitment. And so much of what I now know, I mean, I'm sitting here next to my crystals, and and I used my oils before we got on the phone, and so much of what I know to be healing is mocked.
Mm.
It's delegitimized. It's put in the category of woo woo,
Woo woo.
right?
I was just gonna say woo woo. Yeah, it's such a shame people, I mean, not everyone, but this is why, you're expanding horizons. And I can't believe, look, one thing I'll say, my mom passed away from lung cancer 5 years ago. And we, live in the New York City area. She went to Sloan Kettering, and on the website, when I saw Reiki healing, like, what's this all about? The energy modality. She never got to take advantage of it to kind of help her with her pain and all the end, but I knew nothing about it. And now over the years, I've become familiar with what it is. And it's like, wow, finally, Western and Eastern medicine is starting to meet, starting to become more accepted. That's amazing. But not everyone still is aware. But there have been some strides made where, doctors are even recommending this. Yes, they are. And, maybe there's
I hope
benefits to both sides.
I really hope to be part of that change to normalize, what so much of what I practice and preach when it comes to plant medicines and Reiki and the crystals and the oils and meditation and raising your vibration, and all of that are ways to do that. They should be first lines of defense, not these pharmaceuticals that have tremendous can do tremendous amounts of harm in the form of side effects, but even weaning off these medications. A lot of my clients are struggling to wean off medications they've been on 10 plus years for their, even though their mental health never improved very much, they were on these medications that the game changer, I think, for me, and why I stopped being secretive or shameful of my use of cannabis when I found out that the one medicine that I had been prescribed that I felt like helped me, although there was a very fine line of how much I could take before I was just bedridden, was Xanax. Xanax was a medication that really, at the worst of my struggles, I was vomiting every 6 hours unless I took Xanax. That's how bad it had gotten. So I was taking this medication. It was allowing me to at least mother my children, on a day-to-day basis. And then I found out that you can die just from the withdrawal of benzodiazepine.
What? Are you serious?
Yes. So, the things that we've normalized, I mean, you can go to, most doctors and ask for a Xanax. That's no problem. I mean, I'm lucky to be living in a state where cannabis has become legal, but so many people are not so lucky. And, we demonize a plant that's never killed a soul.
Yeah.
And we make it incredibly expensive by making sure that it's highly controlled, the difference between drugs and pharmaceuticals seems to be whether white billionaires are making profit off of it.
Yeah.
So much of what has helped me and helped my loved ones and helped my clients is just it's either mocked, delegitimized, or outright demonized. And I think that and largely inaccessible. And I think that we need to do a lot better when it comes to what we're offering as healthcare in this country, especially among physicians who have pledged to do no harm.
Fantastic. Wow. And we still have 3 minutes left. What else do you want to share about you, your work, and your services?
Yeah, so as I said, I'm so blessed we have a few more interviews coming up. So next week at this time, by the time we meet, I'll have updated my website to include my brand new private investigation services. So that's an extremely unique service in which if we meet and you give me the name of a loved one who's crossed over that you want to connect with, give me some details. We'll talk about some details. I have the ability, or your money back, to deliver to you within a short time frame evidence of their continued presence. I call myself an evidential medium. So it's not just something that's happening in my head, but I'm observing my environment, and I'm able to deliver the The goods.
I love it. Well, thank you. And if someone wants to reach out with any questions, do you offer an initial consultation? Is there a charge for that? How does it work?
Through my website, you can contact me if we can't figure out what services would best would benefit you most via to an email or text exchange. We can certainly have a conversation without cost and figure out what direction we need to go from there.
Yeah, I was reading in the Oracle cards, and there's just so much to talk about with you, and we don't have enough time.
No, but
How
luckily
does
we
this
have a lot more
happen?
opportunities.
I know, but I am looking forward to speaking with you more. So let's remind everyone again of the website and social media pages.
Sure. So the website is CHS, stands for Compassionate Healing Services, yoga.com. I have an Instagram at Compassionate Healing Services, and I can be reached via telephone at 856-334-0018.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, occupying our space, and sharing your own personal journey. I know which wasn't easy for you, but the fact you come so far and you've learned to not only cope, but to better yourself and to get out of it. And now you're helping people. It's part of, I don't know if we call it karma of the world, but it's great. So happy that, all this work is doing even better work now because you're helping other people.
And that's what brings me true joy. It always has. I've always been a service-oriented person, and to do that to this scope is really a dream come true.
Great. Well, thank you again. You have a great day. And to all of our listeners and viewers, stay tuned. More of the shows coming up after the break.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.